see, do we have a quorum?
You do not have a quorum.
Okay. Okay, call to order the Higher Ed Committee. We are going to operate as a subcommittee until a quorum is present. And just for information, item 5, SB 736, has been pulled from consideration. Senator Alquist, would you like to open on your bill,
yes.
SB 760?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. SB 760, which is sponsored by the California Student Aid Commission, clarifies who reports to the Commission regarding Cal Grant participation, what data may be used in meeting reporting requirements, and when that reporting will occur. Basically, what it does, it allows the Student Aid Commission to collect available information from other agencies rather than requiring institutions to develop the reports themselves. That's one of the main pieces. Second, it limits reporting to Cal Grant eligible undergraduate programs. Third, it extends the date when institutions have time to collect and report to turn in the information from July 1st, 2012 to December 1st, 2013. It's very...
Okay, do you have witnesses?
Good afternoon, Chair Donnelly. My name is Lori Najura. I'm with the California Student Aid Commission. And the Commission is pleased to sponsor SB 760 and thank Senator Alquist for authoring the bill. As the Senator has mentioned during the budget hearings this spring, she was very concerned about the accountability of state funds and voiced her belief that California needed more accountability for those state funds and for student success for those using the funds. The Commission wholeheartedly agrees. Thankfully, the legislature included reporting of enrollment, persistence, graduation, and placement data as a condition of the voluntary participation in the Cal Grant program as part of SB 70, one of the education trailer bills. The Commission believes that SB 760 is a necessary complement to SB 70, as it further narrows the scope of reporting requirements down to Cal Grant eligible undergraduate programs only. The state may choose in the future to take a look at non-credit, extension certificates and degrees, adult education courses, and other programs that are not currently Cal Grant eligible. But for right now, doing so would be very burdensome on the Commission and on the institutions participating. Furthermore, we're grateful that for the committee's support of the extension of the implementation date to December 2013, which allows us ample time to promulgate regulations, program our system, and notify the participating institutions of the data file specifications. I noticed in your committee analysis a question whether the December 1st, 2013 date allows the institutions enough preparation time for reporting on the 2012-13 academic year. In preliminary discussions with CPEC data collectors, we learned that 4 to 6 months was appropriate for gathering and reporting data for the prior academic year. So setting the December 1 report date annually affords a sufficient amount of time. Another consideration in the choice of this date is that it comes at a slower, if there is such a thing, time of year for the financial aid office. It's generally after the arduous start of the academic year and the priority application deadline for our universities, but after the next year's, but before the next year's financial aid application period and spring transfers. For all these reasons, the Commission asks for your support of SB 760. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we hear the next witness, we notice there's a quorum present. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Block, Donnelly.
Here.
Asajian. Brownlee. Here. Fong, Galgiani, Lara.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Portantino. We have a quorum.
Move the bill. Second.
Thank you. Next witness.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Marlene Garcia with the California Community College Chancellor's Office, and we're in support of the bill. And we especially appreciate delaying the implementation date to December. 2012. And also just want to emphasize that we understand that this reporting is really important and appreciate that this bill asks for us to report in the aggregate format for the enrollment, persistence, and graduation data. We can do that now. What we're working with, we'll continue working with the state and the federal government on how we get to the point where we can provide unitary data, disaggregated data on in these categories, as well as the job placement data, which is more challenging to collect. But we're committed to working with the Commission and developing this capacity as we move forward. And so we ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Mark McDonald, McCallum Group, on behalf of a number of local community college districts. Excuse me, Antelope Valley, Glendale, Los Angeles, San Jose Evergreen. And we don't have an official support position yet, but I think we will get there. It's just hasn't been processed. I wanted to acknowledge the author and the sponsors for working with us. We've been working with them closely on the bill and the excellent committee analysis as well. And we look forward to working on this as it goes forward through the regulatory process. And again, thank the author.
Other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, any questions or comments from committee members? Ms. Brownlee.
Just one quick question. So the data that you'd be collecting here is for Cal Grant eligible undergraduate programs, and that is for for-profits, private, and public.
Private and public.
Thank you.
And the reason I created the bill as a senator and as a parent and as a yaya, which is a Greek grandmother, is that I think it's important for students and their families and for communities to really understand what the enrollment, what the graduation rates, what the persistence, how long it takes for them to leave, job data. People want to know that when they start a program, that within a certain amount of time they will be able to finish it, that there's some accountability built into the system. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator. We have a motion by Mr. Sajian, a second by Mr. Lara. The chair recommends do pass to the Assembly Appropriations Committee. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Block.
Block aye.
Block I, Donnelly. Aye. Donnelly I, Asajian. Aye. Asajian I, Brownlee. Aye. Brownlee I, Fong. Galgiani. Lara. Aye. Lara I, Miller. Aye. Miller I, Portantino.
6-0.
6-0. Your bill is out. Congratulations. We'll hold the roll open for additional votes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. We now move to Senator Hernandez. Senator Hernandez, item number 1, SB 185. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members. Good afternoon. It is afternoon, right? It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to begin by saying I accept the Chair's recommended amendments that pushes back the reporting requirements by 1 year to November 1st of 2013. As we all know, this bill helps restore equal opportunity in California's higher education system by strengthening outreach efforts to qualified minority students. The percentage of qualified high school seniors amongst underrepresented groups has increased over the last 15 years, while their representation in the UC system has remained stagnant. Since the passage of Proposition 209 in 1996, there has been a significant drop in the percentage of enrolled minority students at both the CSU as well as the UC systems. In 1995, minority students accounted for 38% of the California high school graduates and 21% of entering UC freshmen. Excuse me. A 17% difference. In 2004, after Proposition 209, minority students made up 45% of high school graduates, but had fallen to 18% of incoming UC freshmen, a 27% difference. This bill would simply help alleviate the discrepancy by allowing California public educational system to establish programs to outreach and retain the highest performing students from all across California in a way that reflects the diverse population that this great state has. I must stress that the intent of this legislation is not to have universities implement quota. Let me restate that, not to have quota systems or preferential admissions, but instead to only consider these factors in their outreach and retention efforts for targeting qualified students. And I respectfully ask for your aye vote, Mr. Chair and members. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any witnesses in support? Witnesses in support, you have up to 6 minutes total.
And, Olga Delia Ramirez with the California State Student Association. We're in strong support of the bill for the reasons stated by the Senator. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Linnea Jordan on behalf of the California Commission on the Status of Women, just expressing our support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeanette Saripatin on behalf of the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, also in strong support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers in support? Any witnesses in opposition? You also have up to 6 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Diane Schachterly. I'm with the American Civil Rights Coalition, and we oppose SB 185 on the basis that it violates Proposition 209 and will not pass constitutional muster. We also dispute the figures on the percentages of students, and we have presented to the Senator our studies on that say that I think how you define minorities is probably the stickling point in who's admitted and who's not. But it's not okay to consider race. The analysis I found to be lacking. It does not. It's missing all of the cases that tell us that we cannot classify by race. You cannot consider race. You cannot use race in any way, shape, or form in higher education admissions. So I think that this is adding the $150,000 a year that the Department of Finance has said this will cost is just a waste of time. It's not going to pass constitutional muster, and we have so many mechanisms in place. CSU admits everyone who's qualified. UC has the comprehensive admissions. There's so many things in place to make sure that everyone gets in that should be in. We oppose this bill, and we hope that you will not pass it on to the floor.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? Moved by Ms. Brownlee, seconded by Mr. Lara. Any discussion by members? Mr. Donnelly.
Senator Hernandez, I'm a little confused here because I've sat in this room and watched us grant access to education to everyone. Doesn't even matter what your race, religion, creed. It doesn't even matter if you're in our country illegally. If you're in our country illegally, we actually give you special treatment. We give you in-state tuition. Now we're going to give you financial aid when the governor signs AB 130 and 131.
Is that correct?
No, I don't support that. My point is now you're asking us to consider race. It's not enough just to have access to education. Now you want us to go beyond that. And I find that deeply offensive. So, Prop 209 says the state shall not discriminate against or grant preferential treatment to any individual or group on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in the operation of the public employment, public education, or public contracting. And you seek to overturn that part of Prop 209. Do you feel that you need a 2/3 vote to do that, since you're trying to overturn a constitutional amendment?
First of all, this is not a constitutional amendment that I'm proposing. This is a legislative intent. And if you look at the California statute, which it's in law right now, and it specifically says, it's Section B, it is the intent of the legislature that the University of California and the California State University, pursuant to Section 66201.5, seek to enroll a student body that meets high academic standards and reflects the cultural, racial, geographic, economic, and social diversity of the state of California. I understand that the voters passed Proposition 209, and perhaps we can have that discussion at a later date. Maybe we should readdress and have the voters look at that again and put that that to the voters. This is a legislative intent that allows the legislature allows the state and the UC and the university and the CSUs to consider. There's by all no means there's no quotas, there's no preferential treatment, and it specifically spells out that you cannot do that.
So how do you get there to your goal without quotas? Because
there's no quotas. There's absolutely no quotas. But it allows the UCs and the CSUs to have more outreach programs to get, as she mentioned, the absolute most qualified. I still believe that their hands are tied. We're not saying you have to have quotas. There's no quotas in this piece of legislation whatsoever.
Well, in my university experience at University of California, Irvine, we had this debate on campus quite a bit because the vast majority of students who were qualified and who excelled and who were accepted happened to be Asian. And so there were a lot of people, including whites, who felt discriminated against. And I was not in favor of granting preferential treatment on the basis of race, on the basis of any race. We are now demographically on the verge of whites. If they are not already a minority, they're going to become a minority in the state of California. I am not in favor of them having any preferential treatment over anyone else, nor do I think we should give preferential treatment to anyone other than we should simply look at and evaluate people according to their own actions and their own success, because that's the whole point. And
that's exactly what this legislation will allow it to do. Is to do exactly that. So, I mean, we can agree to disagree, and we can have a debate all afternoon. But we can agree to disagree.
We'll try to avoid a debate all afternoon. Instead, we'll go to Mr. Lara for his question or comment.
Senator Hernandez, I think this is a great bill, and I would love to be put on as a co-author.
Thank you.
If you amend it. And from what I recall with the University of Michigan Law School case, the decision was made that if the university is finding a critical mass, right, if the university has a lack of diversity, and if they're willing to ensure that for the betterment of their students, that they reach a critical mass, and therefore they can narrowly tailor the use of ethnicity, race, economic background, and so forth in their admissions process. And I think that was a very well-written opinion. And I think, the bill says to the extent that it is possible, given Prop 209 and the decision I forgot the case, the Gratz case.
U.S. Supreme Court in Bollinger held consideration of factors permissible under the Equal Protection Clause.
Right, exactly, that one. And so I think it's very narrowly tailored. I think it's in the right direction. And for the reasons that we talked about on the floor today in terms of acknowledging the 4th of July, we really got to get away from this fear of diversity, and we have to learn to embrace it. And when we talk about minorities or underrepresented groups, that's what makes us strong. That's what makes us who we are. And ensuring that we have a diverse group of folks that are educated and that take the leadership reins of the state is what we should be advocating for. And so I proudly would be supporting this bill today.
Thank you very much, Assembly Member.
Mr. Miller.
Senator, I would submit to you that under the language that you're presenting, that I myself would feel discriminated against as a Jew because it seeks to exclude me from your language. And so it'd be very difficult for me to support it.
I understand. Mike?
Mr. Chair, could I insert?
No, the witnesses are done testifying unless you get a direct question. At this point, I have no one left on the speakers list. My own opinion on this, when this first was presented to us, this notion a couple of years ago by the senator, then assemblyman, I had some Prop 209 concerns myself. What I think I've come to is that this is an education policy board. We are here because we are or have tried to develop some expertise in higher education policy. None of us are jurists. None of us can really say if Prop 209 if this legislation will withstand a challenge by somebody under Prop 209. That is why we have a separation of powers, and that is why there is a judicial branch. And if this bill passes, if we decide it is good educational policy, it may be challenged in court. But far be it from any of us to act as members of the California Supreme Court or any other court. So I'm going to vote for this bill and recommend a vote for this, because I think it's sound educational policy. And if down the line a court overturns it, that's their business and not ours. We have a motion by Ms. Brownlee, a second by Mr. Lara. The motion is do pass as amended to the Assembly Appropriations Committee. Chair recommends an aye vote. Secretary, please call the roll.
Block.
Block aye.
Block aye. Donnelly. No. Donnelly no. Asajian. Brownlee. Aye. Brownlee aye. Fong. Galgiani. Lara. Aye. Lara aye. Miller. Miller no. Portantino. It's 3-2.
Okay, the vote is 3-2. It will be placed on call. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much, Assembly Member.
Next, I see Mr. Padilla. Senator Padilla, come forward, please. This is item number 2, Senate Bill 292.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Last year, as most of you recall, the legislature passed and the governor signed into law what's known as historic transfer reform with the passage of SB 1440. And since then, the California Community College Chancellor's Office and the CSU Chancellor's Office, in partnership with their respective academic senates and other stakeholders, have been convening task force meetings on a monthly basis to ensure that all colleges are in compliance with SB 1440's requirements and aggressive time frame. And even my staff has been monitoring the progress of the task force. SB 292 was first introduced as a vehicle should a legislative fix be required, or should any legislative action be required, identified by the task force to ensure implementation of 1440. And one of the first issues that has come up requiring legislative assist here is the issue of reciprocity. The Community College Academic Senate recently passed a resolution to encourage that districts accept one another's coursework. I can tell you, as the author of 1440, it is absolutely consistent with the intent of last year's bill to make sure that colleges recognize each other's coursework. This consistency of a transfer pathway for students, regardless of community college and regardless of the CSU they're seeking to transfer to, is fundamental not only for the improved transfer of students from 2 years to 4 years, but for the very cost savings that we see as part of the silver lining for both the community college system as well as the CSU system. So I would ask your aye vote on this. Well, let me tell you the other thing that this bill does. It also clarifies that veterans still receive the priority admission under current statute. That was also called into question towards the end of session last year. There's a letter to the file that I submitted, but I want to make sure that we have an abundant clarification of that question. And with that, I'll ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator. Witnesses in support, up to 6 minutes total.
Good afternoon. Jesse Ryan with the Campaign for College Opportunity. We're a bipartisan, broad-based coalition of more than 12,000 business, education, and community leaders across the state that are working to ensure that students both have the opportunity to go to college, but also that they succeed in college in order to meet future workforce needs. We were proud to co-sponsor this historic transfer reform legislation, but we know that the legislation is only as strong insofar as that it is implemented into the intent of the law. As the Transfer Velocity Project shows, more than 40% of community college students will attend more than one community college campus before the point of transfer. We absolutely have to ensure that community colleges honor one another's coursework on this transfer degree pathway if we are going to truly streamline transfer as we see it today. And for that reason, we strongly support SB 292.
Olga Delia Ramirez with the California State Student Association. We were also one of the co-sponsors of SB 1440, and we believe this bill is critical to the success of the transfer process as a whole. Thank you.
Jeanette Sinipatin on behalf of the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, also in strong support.
Mr. Chair and members, I'm Sharon Scott Dow with the Advancement project, and we're in strong support. We do a lot of work with early education, and we find that lots of people wind up having to take courses over and so forth, and we have a very fragile workforce, so we are in strong support of this bill.
Hi, my name is David Zeff with the California Post-Secondary Education Commission, and we support this bill.
Hey, others in support?
Arlene Garcia with the California Community College Chancellor's Office, and we support if amended only because we're dealing with some technical clarifying language that I think should not be a problem at all, but we definitely are in support of the concepts behind this bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Bonnie Slauson, representing the Community College League, and the League is in support of this measure, and we'll be working with the author on any future amendments that come along. Thank you.
Thank you. Witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, questions or comments from committee members? The bill's been moved by Mr. Lara. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Sajian. Do you wish to close?
Yes, just three things. This bill was approved by the Senate on a unanimous bipartisan basis, so there's something here for every district to benefit from. Second, I want to take this opportunity to invite anybody who's interested to an informational hearing that a Senate Select Committee will be having during the summer recess in Los Angeles to sort of get the updates on the task force progress and the implementation of the bill. And last but not least, I'd respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator. Senator, the witness from the Chancellor's Office talked about some minor amendments. Are you going to be working with them?
Yes, we have been and continue to every step of the way. My understanding is it's just technical in nature. They agree clearly with the intent of the bill, which is that reciprocity and the recognition of coursework across districts.
Thank you, Senator. Again, the bill's been moved by Mr. Lara, seconded by Mr. Asajian. The chair recommends to pass to the Appropriations Committee. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Block.
Aye.
Block aye. Donnelly. No. Donnelly no. Asajian. Aye. Asajian aye. Brownlee. Aye. Brownlee aye. Fong. Galgiani. Lara. Aye. Lara aye. Miller. Aye. Miller aye. Portantino. 5-1. 5-1.
5-1. Your bill is out. We'll keep the roll open for additional votes. Thank you, Senator. Last bill today is Senator Fuller. Senator Fuller is item number 3, SB 619. Good afternoon.
Hello. Mr. Chair and members, SB 619 will provide an exemption to the Private Post-Secondary Education Act of 2009 for flight instructors and flight schools who do not require students to enter into contracts of indebtedness and who do not require payment in advance in excess of $2,500. Until reauthorization of the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education in 2009, individual flight instructors and flight instruction schools were not subject to the regulatory authority of the state. Aviation, due to its interstate nature and value to the nation as a transportation system, has long been regulated by the federal government. This FAA regulatory structure exists to ensure that our national system of aviation is subjected to a single nationwide standard. Pilots in training can take a lesson one day from an instructor, move to another state with a logbook and flying time recorded, pick up where they left off with any FAA certified instructor. This is a very different model of instruction than most of the other post-secondary schools that the Bureau was designated to regulate recently. We recognize, however, the role for the state to play in terms of financial protection of students, and working with your committee and staff and others, we have crafted legislation that will allow individual instructors and flight and school instructors who do not require payment in excess of $2,500 to continue to operate without state oversight. We have taken the amendments from the committee and we have added an urgency part in the amendment because we need to move this bill to the governor's desk as soon as possible, because currently there's a one-year exemption for flight instructors and schools that expired on July 1st. I have some witnesses here with me to testify in support of the bill.
Witnesses in support, up to 6 minutes total.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Assembly members. I am Mark Santa Croce. I'm an independent flight instructor. This is a bill that we can live with, that will enable us to continue our businesses and our passions. Without it, it will shut down a major segment of our industry, and I urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair members, Laura Brown on behalf of the National Association of Transportation, and we are the sponsors of the bill. We'd like to thank your committee and the staff in particular for helping us drive the amendments forward and working with us for a long time coming. So we are very appreciative, and we ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Carol Ford. I'm a vice president of the California Pilots Association, and 10% of the state's economy is derived from aviation-related activities. And we are very happy with this bill, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Chuck Cole on behalf of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, a co-sponsor of the measure. We too would like to echo the thanks to this committee and its staff for assisting in the amendments that were introduced in the BNP committee. Also want to thank very much the author. I think there were some unintended consequences, and this allows affordable flight training to continue. So we're really grateful to the committee for its consideration.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, any questions or comments? Mr. Miller. Okay, we have the process for this. It requires two different motions. One is, no way you'd know that. One is to adopt urgency because that's been the amended request. And an urgency amendment requires a majority of those present and voting. And then motion, the main motion. So do you want to make your motion on the urgency? No, you wouldn't have. Okay. Okay, well, you're moving both. You're moving both the urgency and the bill itself, and Mr. Sajian is seconding both, if you want to. Yes, okay.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Chair, do you have a position on this bill?
Yes, the chair, I'll be voting aye. That's good. I mean, I don't have a recommendation on this. I think each member should weigh this him or herself. I don't have a strong feeling, but I will be voting aye, and that tells you something.
I just had a question. So, you know, I've been dealing with educational stuff for a long time, and this is like really foreign to me. So I'm just trying to kind of understand. I get the exemption that you're requesting here. I get the urgency piece, but I don't understand where it's do not require students to enter into a contract of indebtedness nor require the upfront payment of instruction-related costs in excess of $2,500. What does that? I mean, anybody that learns to be a pilot has to pay something, right?
Well, actually, what it is, like, for example, myself, when I was a college student and took my pilot training at Kalinga Kalinga Airport. The people who could give instruction out in that rural area were just individual people that were certified. So I would pay them like $10 every time I went down and took my instruction. And so I never had to pay like a big amount that if they went bankrupt or something that they would owe me. In very, very large places, I think there's maybe only two really big schools. If you can like pay like a large chunk of money in advance and then take your lessons as you go, but then you need some oversight on that amount of money. So we're leaving that in place for anyone who pays more than $2,500.
So there'll be oversight by the
post-secondary.
Secondary.
Yes.
So they'll oversee the money.
If it's over
The
$2,500.
Bureau of Department. No. The other person that you're wanting to oversee here is going to oversee the actual training piece. Okay. The FAA. Okay. And so and this is how it was up until when this post-secondary act passed in 2009?
And I'm going to let Chuck.
Yeah.
Pardon. Good question. Just by way of background. So the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education just resurrected last January after being dark, sunsetted for a period of time. historically, the flight instruction was exempt from oversight by way of a memorandum of understanding. When the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary resurrected back in January, the flight schools, if you will, including individual flight instructors, some could argue, were included within the regulations and oversight of the Bureau. And by way of doing that, flight instructors for the first time, when the notice came out from the Bureau, said, you fall under the regulations of private post-secondary. And so they argued, and we currently argue, hey, wait a minute, we're not a brick and mortar type career school. We're just individual flight instructors who collect pay as you go. We collect payment up front just at that particular lesson. So we need an exemption. So what happened was last year, the legislature passed by way of the budget, a 1-year exemption so that we could come back and introduce a legislative solution. And so this is what 619 provides. It says, look, for individual flight instructors who receive payment as the student comes in, they're exempt from the act because, again, they're not career schools. They're not sitting down, graduating after a certain number of hours. They don't have enrollment agreements, et cetera, et cetera. So this provides a necessary exemption, and one that has been very well crafted. It passed out of the Senate on consent, and it's just a reasonable approach.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Portantino?
Yeah, it was never the intent of the legislature to capture these programs, and the author that did the bill to reestablish the Bureau did a really lousy job.
No.
And unfortunately, captured these schools or these, I guess, mom and pop operations on small airports around the state. And so it was always the intention to clear this up. And as it's been said, last year's budget had the 1-year exemption. I think I'm a co-author or will be a co-author of this because it's never, in the history of regulating the for-profit and career schools, this is never who we've been after. And so just through the vagueness of the original bill, that's why this is necessary. So, thank you.
Now, there have been some flight schools in the state, in the country, that reputedly have closed down, leaving students with a large amount of money that they have paid to the school. And that's where this $2,500 cost comes into play. So nobody's risking $75,000 or anything. So that's considered a reasonable figure. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mr. Miller, second by Mr. Asajian, to adopt the urgency clause. This requires a majority of those present and voting. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Block.
Aye.
Block I, Donnelly. Aye. Donnelly I, Asajian. Aye. Asajian I, Brownlee. Aye. Brownlee I, Fong. Galgiani. Lara. Aye. Lara I, Miller. Miller I, Portantino. Aye. Portantino I. 7-0.
That's 7-0, so the urgency clause is adopted. We will now move to the main motion. Motion by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mr. Asajian. Will the Secretary call the roll? Oh, this is, by the way, the main motion is to pass as amended to the Appropriations Committee.
Block.
Aye.
Block I, Donnelly. Aye. Donnelly I, Asajian. Aye. Asajian I, Brownlee. Aye. Brownlee I, Fong. Galgiani. Lara. Lara I, Miller. Miller I, Portantino. Portantino I. 7-0.
Okay, that's 7-0. Your bill is out.
Thank
We'll
you.
keep the bill open for votes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have one bill on call now. Members, before you leave, if you have not voted on the Hernandez bill, it is on call. Hernandez, item number 1, SB 185. Secretary, please call the roll.
See, Asajian. Asajian, no. Fong. Galgiani. Portantino. Portantino, aye. It's 4-3.
We'll place that back on call. And now we will go through bills that have passed, but people may wish to add on votes.
Okay. SB 292, Padilla. Fong. Galgiani. Portantino. Aye. Portantino, aye. 6-1.
6-1, that bill's out. And we will still hold these open. We'll give members 5 more minutes to get here. Okay.
I've been from 7-16.